The phone rang at 3 in the morning, the kind of call that stops your heart before you even answer. I fumbled in the darkness, my husband Ron still snoring beside me. A woman's voice, calm but urgent, said words that made no sense. "Mrs. Garrison, this is Sacred Heart Hospital in Portland. Your daughter Jennifer is here. She's been in our psychiatric ward for 6 weeks, and tonight she finally remembered who she is." I couldn't breathe. "We buried Jennifer 23 years ago." I sat frozen in bed, the phone pressed against my ear so hard it hurt. My whole body had gone numb. Ron stirred beside me, his hand reaching out to touch my shoulder. "Patsy? Who is it? What's wrong?" I couldn't form words. The nurse on the other end, she'd said her name was Diana, continued speaking in that measured, professional tone that medical people use when they're trying to keep you from falling apart. "Mrs. Garrison, I know this must be confusing and upsetting. We have a patient here, a Jane Doe, approximately 40 years old. The police brought her to us 6 weeks ago after they found her wandering along Highway 101 in a confused state. She couldn't tell us who she was. She's been suffering from severe dissociative amnesia and trauma." My throat finally unlocked. "That's not possible. You have the wrong family. Our daughter died in 2002. She was 17. We had a funeral. We buried her." There was a pause on the line. Ron was fully awake now, sitting up, turning on the bedside lamp. The sudden brightness made me squint. "Mrs. Garrison," Nurse Diana said gently, "I understand this seems impossible, but tonight during a therapy session, something broke through." She started crying and said, "I'm Jennifer Marie Garrison from Seaside, Oregon. She gave us your phone number. She knows things, specific details." "What details?" My voice came out as a whisper. "Your address on Maple Street. Your parents' names, Harold and Ruth. She described your kitchen, said you had yellow curtains with sunflowers on them. She said you made blueberry pancakes every Sunday morning." The phone slipped from my hand and clattered onto the hardwood floor. Those curtains. I'd taken them down 15 years ago, but we'd had them when Jennifer was alive. And the pancakes. Every Sunday without fail. Ron scrambled to pick up the phone. I heard him talking, his voice tight and skeptical. "This doesn't make sense. Are you sure? Could this be some kind of scam?" I couldn't hear Diana's response, but I watched Ron's face cycle through disbelief, anger, and something else I couldn't quite read. Fear, maybe, or guilt. He hung up after a few more minutes and looked at me. His face had gone pale, and in the lamplight I could see every one of his 68 years etched into the lines around his eyes. "We need to go," I said, already throwing back the covers. "We need to go now." "Patsy, wait. Think about this. It's probably some mentally ill person who read about Jennifer online, learn details about our family. This could be someone trying to con us, to get money or attention. Then we'll find out when we get there." I was already pulling clothes from my dresser, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the fabric. "Ron, what if it's really her? What if our daughter is alive?" The 2-hour drive to Portland felt like it took 2 years. We left at 3:30 in the morning, the world still dark and quiet around us. I sat in the passenger seat of Ron's truck, unable to stop shaking. My mind kept circling back to that day in October 2002, when the police came to our door. The accident had been bad, they said. Jennifer's red Honda Civic had gone off a cliff on the coastal highway during a terrible storm. The car had tumbled 200 feet down onto the rocks. The body inside had been burned when the car caught fire. They needed someone to come identify her. Ron had gone first. He'd come back white-faced and wouldn't talk about it. When I insisted on seeing her myself, He tried to stop me, but I had to know. I had to see my baby girl one last time. The face had been so damaged, burned and broken, but the body was the right size, the right build. The medical examiner said the dental records matched. I'd signed the papers. We'd buried her 2 weeks later in a closed casket. What if we made a mistake? I said, into the darkness of the truck cab. What if they got it wrong? Ron's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They used dental records, Patsy. They were sure. People make mistakes. What if there was a mix-up at the morgue? What if? Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't get your hopes up. I can't watch you break apart again if this turns out to be nothing. But I could hear something in his voice that didn't match his words. A tremor, an uncertainty. I turned to look at his profile in the dim glow of the dashboard lights. You saw her at the morgue. You identified her. Were you sure it was Jennifer? He didn't answer for a long moment. The body was in bad shape, Patsy. I thought. I believed it was her. I had to believe it. We arrived at Sacred Heart Hospital, just as the sky was beginning to lighten to a deep gray. The parking lot was nearly empty. Inside, the fluorescent lights felt too bright, too harsh. A security guard directed us to the psychiatric ward on the 4th floor. Nurse Diana met us at the locked double doors. She was a black woman in her 50s with kind eyes and gray streaks in her braided hair. She shook both our hands. Mr. and Mrs. Garrison, thank you for coming. I know this must be incredibly difficult and confusing. Dr. Brennan, our chief psychiatrist, wants to speak with you before you see the patient. We followed her through sterile hallways that smelled of antiseptic and floor wax. She led us to a small office where a man in his early 60s sat behind a cluttered desk. He stood when we entered, extending his hand. His grip was firm and warm. I'm Dr. Philip Brennan. Please, sit down. We sat in the 2 chairs across from his desk. I couldn't stop my leg from bouncing, nervous energy flooding through me. Dr. Brennan folded his hands on his desk. I want to prepare you for what you're about to see. Our patient has been through severe psychological trauma. Dissociative amnesia is the mind's way of protecting itself from memories too painful to process. For 6 weeks, this woman had no idea who she was. No memories, no sense of identity. It's extremely rare for someone to be completely blank like that. What changed tonight? Ron asked. His voice sounded strained. Sometimes a trigger, a smell, a sound can break through the walls the mind has built. Tonight, it was a song playing in the common room, Edelweiss from The Sound of Music. She heard it and started crying. Then she started talking. The memories came flooding back, but only certain ones. She remembers her childhood, her teenage years, but everything after a certain point in October 2002 is blank. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear over the rushing in my ears. The night she died. The night we thought she died. Yes, she remembers leaving your house after an argument. She remembers driving, and then nothing until 6 weeks ago when she regained consciousness on the side of the highway. What happened to her for 23 years? I asked. Dr. Brennan's expression grew somber. We don't know yet. Those memories may return with time and therapy, or they may be lost forever. But I need to warn you, even if this is your daughter, she's not going to be the girl you remember. Trauma changes people. She's fragile right now. Very fragile. Can we see her? My voice cracked on the words. Please. Dr. Brennan nodded and stood. We followed him out of the office, down another hallway, past other closed doors. He stopped at room 412 and knocked gently before opening it. The room was small and plain, painted a soft blue. There was a bed, a chair, a small window with bars on it, and sitting on the bed wearing gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt, was a woman. She was thin, too thin, with long hair that had gone gray in streaks. Her face was weathered, lined with years of pain I couldn't imagine. But when she looked up at us, when those eyes met mine, everything in the world stopped. I knew those eyes. I had looked into them every single day for 17 years. I had watched them light up with laughter and darken with teenage anger. I had seen them cry over skinned knees and broken hearts. "Mom?" The word came out as barely a whisper. My legs gave out. Ron caught me, his arm around my waist, but I was already sliding to the floor. I crawled across the linoleum toward the bed. The woman, my daughter, my Jennifer, started sobbing. She slid off the bed and met me halfway. We collided in the middle of that sterile hospital room, arms wrapping around each other, both of us crying so hard we couldn't breathe. She felt so thin in my arms, like she might break, but she was warm and real and alive. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying over and over. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I couldn't remember. I didn't know who I was. I couldn't find my way back to you." I held her face in my hands, studying every line, every change. She was 40 years old now. My baby was 40. "It's okay. It's okay, sweetheart. You're here now. You're here." Behind us, Ron stood frozen in the doorway. His face had gone sheet white. When I looked at him, I saw shock. Yes, but also something else. Something that made my stomach turn cold. Jennifer pulled back slightly and looked at him. "Dad?" He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at her like he'd seen a ghost, which I suppose he had. "Ron," I said sharply, "this is your daughter." He finally seemed to shake himself out of it. He took a few steps into the room but didn't come closer. "Jennifer, how is this possible?" Jennifer's face clouded with confusion and fear. "I don't know. I don't remember. I left the house that night. I was so angry. We'd been fighting about Tyler. I got in my car and drove toward the coast. I was crying. And then," she pressed her hands to her temples, "there's nothing. It's just blank. Like someone erased 23 years of my life." "Tyler," I said softly. "Tyler Crawford, her boyfriend. Ron had hated him, called him a loser, forbade Jennifer from seeing him. The fight that night had been about Tyler. Jennifer had screamed that she loved him, that she was going to be with him no matter what Ron said, and she'd stormed out. We never saw her again. Until now. "Where have you been?" Ron asked. His voice sounded strange, tight. "What happened to you?" "I don't know." Jennifer's voice rose in panic. "I told you I can't remember. The last thing I remember is driving and crying. The next thing I know, I'm waking up on the side of the road 6 weeks ago, with no idea who I am or how I got there. The police found me. I've been here ever since, just blank, empty. Until tonight, when I heard that song and everything came back, but only the before, not the during, not the 23 years in between." I held her again as she cried. Over her shoulder, I watched Ron. He looked sick, actually physically ill. And for the first time since we'd gotten that phone call, I felt a cold finger of suspicion trace down my spine. "Ron," I said slowly, "if Jennifer is alive, then who did we bury?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Dr. Brennan cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. "That's something the authorities will need to investigate," he said carefully. "Detective Laura Hayes is on her way. She'll want to speak with all of you." Ron's jaw tightened. "This is insane. The whole thing is insane." But I couldn't stop staring at Jennifer. My daughter. Alive. Older, damaged, but alive. Nothing else mattered in that moment. I held her hand, feeling her pulse under my thumb. Real, warm, living. Detective Hayes arrived 20 minutes later. She was a woman in her late 30s, with sharp eyes and short auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail. She shook all our hands and pulled up a chair next to Jennifer's bed. "Miss Garrison," she said gently, "I know you've been through a lot, but I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay?" Jennifer nodded, still gripping my hand like a lifeline. "Tell me what you remember about October 15th, 2002. Jennifer took a shaky breath. I was 17. It was a Tuesday. I'd been dating Tyler Crawford for 6 months. My dad, she glanced at Ron. He hated Tyler, called him trash. That night, Dad found out Tyler and I were planning to meet up. We got into a huge fight. He said if I left the house to see Tyler, I wasn't his daughter anymore. I remembered that night. The shouting, the slamming doors. I'd tried to mediate, but Ron had been so angry, and Jennifer had been so stubborn. "I got in my car," Jennifer continued, "my red Honda Civic. I drove toward the coast. I was going to meet Tyler at our spot, this overlook near Cannon Beach. I was crying so hard I could barely see. And then," she pressed her palms against her eyes, "nothing. It's just gone." Detective Hayes made notes on a small pad. "Do you remember arriving at the overlook? Do you remember seeing Tyler?" "No, nothing after getting in the car." Hayes turned to Ron and me. "Mr. and Mrs. Garrison, can you walk me through what happened that night from your perspective?" Ron shifted in his seat. "Jennifer left around 8 at night. She didn't come home. By midnight, I was worried. I drove out looking for her. I checked the overlook where I knew she and Tyler met sometimes." "How did you know about that spot?" Hayes asked. "I'd followed her there before, to make sure she was safe." Ron's voice was defensive. She was 17, dating a 20-year-old dropout. Of course I kept tabs on her. Hayes wrote that down. "And what did you find at the overlook?" "Her car. The red Civic. It was parked there, empty. Keys still in the ignition. I looked around, called for her. Nothing. I drove up and down the highway for hours. At dawn, I called the police to report her missing. And then?" Ron's face went gray. 2 days later, they found a car at the bottom of the cliff, about 5 miles south of the overlook. A red Civic. It had gone over the edge and caught fire. There was a body inside. "You identified the body?" Hayes asked. "Yes. I went to the morgue. The medical examiner showed me. It was bad. The fire, the impact. But the size was right. The hair color. They said they'd confirm with dental records." "And did they?" A long pause. "They said they did. They said it was Jennifer." Hayes leaned forward. "They said they did? Or you saw the confirmation yourself?" I don't know. There was paperwork. The medical examiner said it matched. I signed forms. Patsy saw the body too, a few days later." Hayes turned to me. "Mrs. Garrison?" My voice shook as I answered. The body was in terrible condition. Burned. The face was almost unrecognizable. But the medical examiner said it was her, said the dental records matched. We had no reason to doubt it. "I'm going to need to see those records," Hayes said, still writing, "and I'm going to need to speak with the medical examiner who handled the case." She looked at Jennifer. "Do you remember anything at all about those 2 days between leaving your house and when your car was found?" Jennifer shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I've been trying. I keep trying to remember, but there's nothing there." "What about Tyler Crawford?" I asked suddenly. "Did anyone ever find him?" Hayes flipped through her notes. "I'll need to pull the files, but from what I recall, Tyler Crawford was also reported missing around that same time. His car was found abandoned near the Canadian border, about 48 hours after Jennifer disappeared. There were no signs of foul play. The assumption was that he'd run away, possibly to Canada. His family filed a missing persons report, but there were no leads. He was never found. My blood ran cold. Tyler and Jennifer had both disappeared the same night. Jennifer's car was found with someone else's body in it, and Tyler vanished without a trace. "We need to exhume the grave," I said. The words felt like stones in my mouth. "We need to know who we buried." Ron stood up abruptly. "Absolutely not. We're not disturbing a grave. This is wrong. This whole thing is wrong. Ron, our daughter is sitting right here, alive. That means someone else is in her grave. Someone else's family has been looking for them for 23 years. We have to know." Detective Hayes nodded. "I agree. I'll file for an exhumation order today. It'll take a few days to process, but we need to identify those remains." Ron's hands clenched into fists. "This is insane. You're all insane." He turned and walked out of the room. I watched him go, that cold suspicion growing stronger. Why was he so resistant? Why didn't he want to know the truth? Over the next 3 days, I barely left Jennifer's side. The hospital agreed to keep her for observation and continued therapy. She had nightmares, waking up screaming about darkness and cold and being trapped. Dr. Brennan said it was her subconscious trying to process the trauma she couldn't consciously remember. Ron went back to our house in Seaside. He called once a day, his conversations brief and tense. He said he needed to process everything and take care of things at home. But I heard something else in his voice. Distance, guilt, fear. On the morning of the 4th day, Detective Hayes called me. "The exhumation order came through. We're opening the grave this afternoon. I thought you'd want to be there." I did, and I didn't. The thought of disturbing what we'd believed was Jennifer's final resting place made me sick, but we had to know. I called Ron. He argued with me, his voice rising. "This is wrong, Patsy. We're disturbing the dead. What good can come of this?" "The truth," I said flatly. "The truth can come of this. You're coming with me to the cemetery. 2 o'clock. He showed up, but he looked terrible. He'd lost weight in just a few days. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hands shook. We stood at Ocean View Cemetery under a gray sky that threatened rain. A small crew worked with quiet efficiency, removing the earth that had covered the grave for 23 years. The headstone read, "Jennifer Marie Garrison, beloved daughter, 1985 to 2002. It took over an hour to reach the casket. When they lifted it out of the ground, I had to turn away. This felt like desecration, even though I knew it was necessary. The medical examiner, a different one from 2002, was a woman named Dr. Sarah Winters. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She opened the casket carefully, and I forced myself to look. Skeletal remains. That's all that was left. Bones in the remnants of the dress we'd buried Jennifer in. A blue sundress with white flowers. Her favorite. Dr. Winters examined the skeleton carefully, taking measurements, making notes. Ron stood 10 feet away, his face the color of ash. After about 20 minutes, Dr. Winters straightened up and looked at us. "Mrs. Garrison, I need to ask you something. Your daughter Jennifer, did she have any surgical scars? Any previous injuries or medical procedures?" "She had her appendix removed when she was 12, I said. "Emergency surgery. She almost died from appendicitis." Dr. Winters nodded slowly. "Can you tell me which side?" "Her right side." "Why?" Dr. Winters gestured to the skeleton. "These remains show no evidence of an appendectomy. There's no scarring on the bones, no signs of surgical intervention in that area. Mrs. Garrison, Mr. Garrison, this is not your daughter. The world tilted. Detective Hayes caught my arm as my knees buckled. Then, who is it? My voice came out as a whisper. We'll need to run DNA tests, dental analysis, try to identify her through the national database. But whoever this young woman was, she was not Jennifer Garrison. Detective Hayes turned to Ron, her expression hard. Mr. Garrison, I need you to walk me through the identification process again. In 2002, you were the first one to view the body at the morgue, correct? Ron couldn't seem to speak. He just nodded. And you identified that body as your daughter? Another nod. Before your wife had a chance to view it herself, I wanted to protect Patsy from having to see her like that. The body was in such bad shape, burned, broken. I thought. You thought what, Mr. Garrison? Ron's face crumpled. I thought it was her. I wanted it to be her, because the alternative was worse. What alternative? Hayes' voice was sharp. That she'd run away, that she'd chosen to leave us, that she'd picked that boyfriend over her family and just disappeared. So you identified a body as your daughter, even though you couldn't be certain? The medical examiner said the dental records matched. Hayes pulled out her phone and made a call. We waited in tense silence while she spoke to someone, her voice low. When she hung up, her expression was grim. I just spoke with records from 2002. The dental comparison was flagged for incomplete analysis. It should have been sent for secondary confirmation, but someone signed off on it anyway. The case was closed as accidental death within 2 weeks. That's unusually fast for this kind of situation. She stepped closer to Ron. Mr. Garrison, did you have any contact with the medical examiner's office beyond the standard procedures? Did you speak with anyone about expediting the case? Ron's hands were shaking violently now. I just wanted it to be over. I wanted to bury my daughter and grieve and move on. I didn't want it dragged out. That's not what I asked. Ron turned away from her, from all of us. His shoulders shook. I did what I had to do to protect this family, and that's when I knew. My husband had lied. He'd known, or at least suspected, that the body wasn't Jennifer, and he'd let us bury a stranger anyway. Detective Hayes didn't waste any time. She spent the next 2 days pulling every file, every record, every piece of documentation from the 2002 case. I stayed at a hotel near the hospital, unable to face Ron, unable to go back to our house in Seaside. Jennifer remained in the psychiatric ward, and I spent every possible moment with her. On the 6th day after that 3 a.m. phone call that changed everything, Hayes called me to the police station. When I arrived, she led me to a small conference room. The table was covered with files and photographs. Mrs. Garrison, I need to show you something. It's not easy to see. She laid out the case file from 2002. Photos of the car wreckage. Photos of the body at the morgue. I forced myself to look, though every image made my stomach turn. This is the body your husband identified as Jennifer, Hayes said, pointing to one of the morgue photos. The remains were badly burned, barely recognizable as human. The medical examiner who handled the case was a man named Dr. Walter Simmons. He retired in 2010 and died 3 years ago. So we can't ask him about the dental records? No. But I've been going through his case files, and I found something interesting. In almost every other case Simmons handled, there are detailed notes, second opinions, extensive documentation. But in Jennifer's case, the file is thin. Barely any notes. The dental comparison was marked as complete, but there's no supporting documentation attached. No x-rays, no detailed analysis. Just a check mark that says, confirmed. Someone rushed it through, I said slowly. That's what it looks like. And there's more. She pulled out another file. Your husband, Ron, worked at Garrison Marine Repair, his own business fixing boats. In 2002, one of his regular customers was Dr. Simmons. He had a sailboat that Ron serviced multiple times a year. My mouth went dry. They knew each other. They did. I can't prove anything, but the timeline is suspicious. Jennifer disappears on October 15th. Her car is found on October 17th, with a body inside. Ron identifies the body on October 18th. Simmons signs off on the dental records that same day, without the standard waiting period for confirmatory tests. The case is closed as accidental death on October 25th, 10 days from disappearance to closed case. That's extraordinarily fast. You think Ron paid him off? To falsify the dental records? I think it's possible. But without Simmons alive to testify, I can't prove it. She pulled out more papers. However, I can prove this. Ron filed a life insurance claim on Jennifer in January 2003, a policy for $500,000 that he'd taken out on her when she turned 16. The air left my lungs. $500,000. The insurance company paid out in March 2003. I've been tracking Ron's financial records. That money is gone, Mrs. Garrison. He spent it. Boats, gambling trips to Vegas, bad investments. By 2008, it was all gone. He's been living off savings and business income since then. I sat down heavily in one of the conference room chairs. He needed her to be dead for the insurance money. That's my theory. But there's more. Hayes pulled out another file. This one had a photo paper clip to the front. A young man with dark hair and a crooked smile. Tyler Crawford. Tyler disappeared the same night as Jennifer. His car was found near the Canadian border 2 days later, abandoned. No signs of foul play. His family assumed he'd run away, maybe crossed into Canada to avoid legal troubles. He'd had some minor drug possession charges. You don't think he ran away? No, I don't. I think something happened that night at that overlook. Something involving Jennifer, Tyler, and your husband. She leaned forward. Mrs. Garrison, I need to ask you something difficult. What kind of man is your husband? Has he ever been violent? I wanted to say no. I wanted to defend him, but I couldn't. He has a temper. He's broken things when he's angry. Punched walls, threw a chair once during an argument about money. But he never hit me. Never hit Jennifer, not that I know of. Did he ever threaten Tyler? I closed my eyes, remembering. He said Tyler wasn't good enough for Jennifer. He said if Tyler corrupted her or got her into trouble, he'd make him regret it. I thought it was just talk, just a father being overprotective. I need to ask Ron some hard questions. Would you be willing to be present? I nodded. Yes. I need to hear what he has to say. Hayes called Ron and told him to come to the station. He arrived an hour later, looking even worse than he had at the cemetery. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair uncombed. He looked at me with something like betrayal in his eyes. You're siding with them against me? I'm siding with the truth, I said quietly. That's all I want. The truth. We sat in an interrogation room, harsh fluorescent lights overhead, a video camera recording in the corner. Hayes read Ron his rights, which made his face go even paler. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But you're a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. You have the right to have a lawyer present. I don't need a lawyer. I haven't done anything wrong. Hayes opened her file. Mr. Garrison, let's start with the night Jennifer disappeared. Tell me again what happened. Ron's story came out haltingly, with long pauses. He'd followed Jennifer that night after their fight. He'd been angry, worried she'd do something stupid. He tracked her to the overlook where she'd planned to meet Tyler. "What happened when you got there?" Hayes asked. Ron's hands twisted together on the table. They were there, Jennifer and Tyler, standing by Tyler's car, talking, making plans. Plans to do what? To run away together, to elope. Tyler wanted to take her to California, get married, start a life away from me. His voice broke with bitterness. He was going to steal my daughter. "What did you do?" I got out of my truck. I confronted them. I told Tyler to leave, to get away from Jennifer, and never come back. And what did Tyler say? He laughed at me. Said Jennifer was an adult, could make her own choices. Said I couldn't control her anymore. Ron's face flushed with remembered anger. He put his hands on me, pushed me. We fought. My heart was pounding. "Ron, what happened next?" He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. He fell. We were struggling near the edge of the overlook, and he lost his balance. He went over, down onto the rocks below. It was an accident, Patsy. I swear it was an accident. The room went silent, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. Hayes leaned forward. "Tyler Crawford fell off the cliff." "Yes. And then what?" Jennifer was hysterical, screaming. I tried to calm her down, to explain it was an accident, but she wouldn't listen. She said I killed him. She said she was going to the police. I grabbed her arm, tried to stop her from running, but she fought me. She got away. Ran into the trees. I chased her, but it was dark. I lost her. "So, you lost track of Jennifer in the woods," Hayes said carefully. "What did you do then?" I went back to the overlook. Tyler's car was still there. Jennifer's car was there. I panicked. I thought if the police found Tyler's body and both cars at the scene, they'd investigate. They'd question Jennifer. She'd tell them I pushed Tyler. She'd never understand it was an accident. "So you moved the cars?" Ron nodded miserably. "I drove Tyler's car away, drove it north, toward the border, and left it there to make it look like he'd run away. Then I came back for Jennifer's car. But Jennifer was still missing. I waited all night for her to come back. She never did. At dawn, I drove her car back home, parked it in our garage. I thought she'd come back eventually. She'd be cold and scared, and she'd come home, and we could figure out what to do. My hands were shaking, but she never came home. No. Days went by. I was terrified. I didn't know if she was dead in those woods or if she'd run away to avoid talking to police about Tyler. I couldn't report her missing without explaining why I'd been at the overlook. Then the police found a car at the bottom of a different cliff. A red Honda Civic, burned, with a body inside. Hayes' voice was hard. "And you identified that body as Jennifer," I thought. I hoped maybe it was her, that she'd crashed trying to get away from the scene. But when I saw the body, I knew it wasn't her. It was too tall. The build was wrong. But by then, I'd already said it was Jennifer. And I thought, maybe this is the way out. If everyone thinks Jennifer is dead, she can come home eventually. And we can say it was all a mistake, and Tyler's death stays an accident that nobody connects to me. But Jennifer never came home. No. Tears were streaming down Ron's face now. She disappeared that night, and I never saw her again. Until now. Hayes pulled out another file. Inside was a photo of a young woman with long brown hair and a bright smile. "Do you recognize this person, Mr. Garrison?" Ron stared at the photo. His face went gray. "No. Who is that?" "This is Amanda Crawford, Tyler's younger sister. She was 16 in 2002. After Tyler disappeared, she became convinced something had happened to him. She started asking questions, investigating on her own. She came to your shop in early November 2002, asking if you'd seen Tyler. Do you remember that? Ron's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Multiple witnesses place Amanda at your shop on November 8, 2002. That was a Friday afternoon. No one saw her after that. She was reported missing on November 10th. Her body has never been found. The pieces clicked into place in my mind, and I felt sick. The body in Jennifer's grave. It's Amanda. Hayes nodded. The timeline fits. The age fits. We're running DNA tests now, comparing the remains to Amanda's family. But I believe you're right, Mrs. Garrison. She turned back to Ron. I think Amanda came asking questions you couldn't answer. I think she got too close to the truth about Tyler. And I think you killed her. No, Ron's voice cracked. I didn't. I never. Did you have help? Did someone help you stage that car accident with Jennifer's car? Someone who could make a body match the description closely enough. Someone who had access to the morgue and could falsify dental records? Ron put his face in his hands. His whole body shook. Detective Hayes stood. Ronald Garrison, you're under arrest for the murder of Amanda Crawford and the filing of a false police report in the death investigation of Jennifer Garrison. You're also under suspicion in the death of Tyler Crawford. She read him his rights again while two uniformed officers came in to handcuff him. As they led him away, he looked at me one last time. Patsy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just wanted to protect our family. But all I could think was, he'd been willing to let me believe our daughter was dead for 23 years. And somewhere out there, Jennifer had been alive, suffering, lost, while we mourned a stranger. The media descended like vultures. Dead girl returns after 23 years. Husband arrested for murder. The story was everywhere. Our phones rang constantly. News vans parked outside the hospital and our house. I stopped answering calls from anyone except Detective Hayes and Dr. Brennan. Ron was being held without bail. His lawyer was arguing accident and panic, trying to get the charges reduced. But with Amanda Crawford's remains now identified through DNA and the evidence of Ron's lies piling up, it didn't look good for him. I stayed focused on Jennifer. She'd been released from the psychiatric ward into my care, but Dr. Brennan insisted on daily therapy sessions. We couldn't go back to Seaside. The house was surrounded by reporters. Instead, I rented a small apartment in Portland where we could hide and heal. It was in that apartment, a week after Ron's arrest, that Jennifer's memories began to break through. We were sitting on the small couch, watching an old movie, when Jennifer suddenly went rigid. Her eyes went wide and unfocused. Her breathing accelerated. Jennifer? Sweetheart, what's wrong? I remember. Her voice was barely a whisper. I remember running through the trees. It was so dark. I could hear Dad calling my name, but I was so scared. Tyler was dead. I saw him fall, and Dad was chasing me. I held her hand, careful not to interrupt. I ran for hours, I think. Or maybe it was minutes. I don't know. Everything was confused. Eventually, I made it to the highway. I was cold. My clothes were torn from branches. I tried to hitchhike. I just wanted to get away, to get somewhere safe so I could call the police. What happened then? Her face crumpled. A truck stopped. A man. He seemed nice at first. He said he'd take me to the nearest town. He gave me coffee from a thermos. It was hot and sweet. I was so grateful. She started shaking, but there was something in the coffee. I started feeling dizzy, sleepy. I tried to tell him something was wrong, but I couldn't form the words. And then everything went black. Rage flooded through me. Someone drugged you. When I woke up, I was in a basement. Cement walls. A small window too high to reach. A mattress on the floor. A bucket in the corner. Her voice had gone flat, emotionless, the way people sound when they're describing something too horrible to process. There was a man. His name was Carl. Carl Hutchins. The name hit me like a physical blow. Carl Hutchins. He'd been one of Ron's regular customers at the boat repair shop, a fisherman with a weathered face and calloused hands. He'd come to our house for barbecues a few times. I'd served him potato salad and lemonade. Carl kept me in that basement for weeks. He barely talked to me, just brought food and water once a day. I screamed for help until my voice gave out. I tried to break the window, but it was reinforced with bars. I was trapped. Oh, sweetheart. I pulled her close, tears streaming down my face. And then Dad came. My blood went cold. Ron came to where you were being held? Yes. About a month after I'd been taken. He came down into the basement. He looked at me, and I thought he was there to rescue me. But he wasn't. Her voice broke. He said, "You're not coming home until you forget about Tyler and learn to be an obedient daughter. This is for your own good. You'll thank me someday." I felt like I was going to vomit. He knew. He knew where you were. He paid Carl. I heard them talking upstairs. Dad was paying Carl to keep me there. He said it was temporary, just until I learned my lesson. He said once I was ready to be a good daughter again, to forget about Tyler and move on, he'd bring me home. But he never did. No. He came back twice more over the next few months. Each time he asked if I was ready to behave. Each time I screamed at him, called him a murderer, said I'd go to the police the second I got free. So he left me there. Jennifer's whole body was trembling now, but she kept talking, the words pouring out like poison being drawn from a wound. After about 6 months, Dad stopped coming. Carl told me Dad wasn't paying anymore. He said Dad had washed his hands of me, but Carl didn't let me go. He said he'd gone to too much trouble, taken too many risks. He said if he let me go, I'd tell people what he'd done, and he'd go to prison. So he just kept you prisoner. For years. He moved me around. Different basements, different sheds. Even an old boat that was dry docked. Every time I tried to escape, he'd catch me and move me somewhere more secure. Eventually She stopped, struggling for words. I broke. I stopped fighting. I stopped thinking. I just existed, day to day, like an animal. The years blurred together. I couldn't remember who I'd been before. Sometimes I forgot my own name. The horror of it was beyond comprehension. My daughter had spent 23 years as a prisoner, abandoned by her own father, kept like an animal by a monster. How did you get out? Carl died. 6 weeks ago. Heart attack, I think. He just didn't come down one day, or the next. I waited 3 days before I realized something was wrong. The door to the shed I was in wasn't properly locked. He must have been getting careless after so many years. I pushed it open and walked out. And you didn't remember who you were? No. By then, I'd been dissociated for so long that when I was suddenly free, my mind just shut down. I walked. I don't know how long. Eventually, I ended up on the highway. The police found me. The rest you know. I held her while she cried. This beautiful, broken woman who'd survived the unthinkable. My daughter, who'd been betrayed by the man who should have protected her most. After Jennifer calmed down enough, I called Detective Hayes. She arrived within the hour and took Jennifer's full statement. The horror on Hayes's face mirrored my own. "We need to find Carl Hutchins' properties," Hayes said. "We need to document everything, gather evidence. Jennifer, do you think you could identify the locations where you were held?" Jennifer nodded shakily. "I think so. At least the last one, the shed. I don't know the address, but I could recognize the area. It was outside Astoria, I think, near the water." Over the next few days, Hayes and her team tracked down Carl Hutchins's property records. He'd owned a small house outside Astoria, just as Jennifer remembered. They obtained a search warrant and brought Jennifer to identify it. We drove out there on a gray morning, 11 days after that first phone call that changed everything. The property was isolated, surrounded by trees, with a view of the water in the distance. There was a small house, and behind it, a shed. Jennifer went pale when she saw the shed. "That's it. That's where I was." The forensics team went in first. When they came out, their faces were grim. Hayes called me aside. "There's evidence of long-term captivity, a mattress, chains, minimal supplies. And Mrs. Garrison, we found something else. Documents. Financial records showing payments from Ron Garrison to Carl Hutchins. They go back to October 2002, $50,000 initially, then monthly payments of $1,000 for about a year. He paid Carl to kidnap her, to keep her. It looks that way. We're bringing additional charges against Ron. This isn't just murder anymore. This is kidnapping, human trafficking, conspiracy. He's looking at life in prison, minimum." I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was numb. That night, back at the apartment, Jennifer had a nightmare. She woke up screaming, and it took me 20 minutes to calm her down. Dr. Brennan had warned me this would happen. The trauma was too deep, too extensive. Jennifer would need years of therapy to even begin to heal. And then my phone rang. It was Ron's lawyer. "Mrs. Garrison, I thought you should know. We're going to fight these charges." Mr. Garrison maintains that Jennifer's memories are unreliable due to her mental state. "We have psychiatric experts who will testify that dissociative amnesia can create false memories, that trauma victims often confabulate or misremember events." "You're saying my daughter is lying?" "I'm saying her testimony is questionable at best. Without physical evidence directly linking Mr. Garrison to the kidnapping, without Carl Hutchins alive to testify against him, we believe there's reasonable doubt." "The money." "He paid Carl. Business transactions. Mr. Garrison claims those were loans for Carl's fishing business. There's no proof they were payment for kidnapping." After he hung up, I sat in the darkness of the apartment, listening to Jennifer's uneven breathing from the bedroom. The justice system might fail us. Ron might find a way to twist the truth, to paint Jennifer as unreliable, to walk free. And if he walked free, neither of us would ever be safe. The next morning, Detective Hayes came by with more bad news. Ron posted bail. What? How? He put up his business, his house, everything he owns. The judge set bail at $2 million. Apparently, Ron has friends with money willing to back him. He's out as of an hour ago. Where is he? He's required to stay within the county and wear an ankle monitor. He's not allowed to contact you or Jennifer. But Patsy, legally, the house in Seaside is still half his until the divorce is finalized. He has a right to be there. You're saying he could come home. I'm saying he probably will. And there's nothing I can do to stop him unless he violates the restraining order by contacting you directly. I looked at Jennifer, who'd gone pale. She couldn't go back to that house. She couldn't live under the same roof as the man who'd destroyed her life. But apparently, we didn't have a choice. We had nowhere else to go. The apartment lease was up, and I couldn't afford to keep paying for it. Our savings were gone, burned through by hospital bills and legal fees. The house in Seaside was all we had. Ron beat us there. When Jennifer and I pulled up 3 days after his release, his truck was already in the driveway. My stomach turned to ice. "I can't go in there," Jennifer whispered. "Mom, please, I can't be near him." "We don't have anywhere else to go, baby. But I promise you, I won't let him hurt you. We'll put locks on your bedroom door. We'll stay together. And the trial is in 2 months. Once he's convicted, he'll be gone forever." But Jennifer's hands were shaking so badly, she could barely open the car door. Inside, Ron was in the kitchen making coffee like it was any other morning. He looked thinner, older, but there was a hardness in his eyes I'd never seen before. "Welcome home," he said flatly. "This isn't your home anymore," I shot back. "Judge says otherwise. House is half mine until the divorce is final. I've got every right to be here." He looked at Jennifer, who was pressed against my side. "Hello, Jennifer." She didn't answer, just stared at him with wide, terrified eyes. Over the following days, living in that house became a waking nightmare. Ron acted like a victim, told neighbors that Jennifer and I were ganging up on him, making false accusations. He played the role of grieving father so well that some people actually believed him. He'd made sure to be seen at Jennifer's grave every week for 23 years. He'd kept her room exactly as she'd left it, like a shrine. He'd talked about her at every opportunity, keeping her memory alive. Now he was using all of that to paint himself as the devoted father being victimized by a mentally unstable daughter. Jennifer couldn't eat, could barely sleep. She had panic attacks whenever Ron was in the same room. I pushed furniture against her bedroom door every night and slept on the floor beside her bed. Ron never directly threatened us. He was too smart for that, but his presence was a threat in itself. The way he'd look at Jennifer with cold calculation, the way he'd make comments, just loud enough for us to hear. "Memory is such a tricky thing," he'd say, reading the paper. "People think they remember things that never happened. Trauma does that to the brain." Juries don't like unreliable witnesses, he'd mention while making dinner, especially ones with documented mental illness. He was trying to break Jennifer, to make her too afraid to testify, and it was working. 2 weeks after he came home, I was cleaning out the garage, trying to stay busy, trying not to think about the trial that loomed closer every day. In the back, behind boxes of old tools and parts for boats Ron no longer owned, I found a metal toolbox I'd never seen before. It was locked. I took a hammer and broke the cheap lock. Inside was an old cell phone, a burner phone, the kind you could buy with cash and use without a contract. I charged it in the garage, not wanting Ron to know what I'd found. When it powered on, I nearly dropped it. Text messages, hundreds of them. Going back years, they were between Ron and someone saved in the contacts as C.H. Carl Hutchins. I scrolled through them, my hands shaking harder with each message. October 16, 2002. Got her. Pickup was smooth. Where do you want me to take her? October 17, 2002. That's a lot of money, Ron. You sure about this? October 18, 2002. $50K transferred. Keep her there until she comes to her senses. The messages continued. Monthly updates from Carl. She's being difficult. Tried to escape again. Had to secure the windows. How much longer is this going to be? And Ron's responses. As long as it takes. Don't let her manipulate you. She'll break eventually. But then, around April 2003, I'm done paying. Figure something else out. Carl's response. You can't just cut me off. I've got a person here. What am I supposed to do with her? Ron. That's your problem now. And then the messages stopped for several years until 2006 when they picked up again. But this time, they were about something else. Carl. That girl who came around asking questions about her brother. Amanda Crawford. She's been talking to people. Someone's going to believe her eventually. Ron. Can you take care of it? Carl. What do you mean take care of it? Ron. Same way we handled Jennifer. Just until things cool down. Carl. This is different. This isn't your kid. This is someone else. Ron. 50,000. Same as before. There was a long gap then. Done. But we need to do something about the body. Can't keep it. Ron. Use Jennifer's car. I still have it stored in a barn outside town. Stage an accident. My vision was blurring. I was reading evidence of murder, premeditated murder. They'd killed Amanda Crawford, burned her body in Jennifer's car, and then Ron had identified it as his own daughter. I took the phone and ran inside. Jennifer was in her room. I knocked frantically. Jennifer, I found something. We have proof. We have everything. I showed her the phone, the messages. Her face went from confusion to horror to something like hope. This proves he did it. This proves all of it. We need to get this to Detective Hayes right now. I grabbed my keys and purse. But when we opened the front door to leave, Ron was standing there. He'd been out in the yard. He looked at the phone in my hand, and his face went dead white. Where did you get that? It was in your toolbox. I found it. Give it to me. That's my property. This is evidence. Evidence that you killed Amanda Crawford, that you paid Carl to kidnap Jennifer. It's all here, Ron. Every message. His face twisted with rage. You've been snooping through my things. That's illegal. That evidence won't hold up in court. We'll see about that. I tried to push past him, but he grabbed my arm. Hard! Jennifer screamed. He shoved me backward into the house. I stumbled, dropped the phone. Ron lunged for it. Jennifer threw herself at him, surprising us both. She was screaming, hitting him, years of terror and rage finally erupting. Ron pushed her away. She fell against the coffee table. I grabbed the phone and ran for the door. But Ron was faster. He caught me in the driveway, ripped the phone from my hand, and threw it. It hit the concrete and shattered, pieces flying everywhere. You stupid woman, he snarled. You think you're so smart. You think you can destroy me with a phone full of messages from 20 years ago? I've got lawyers. I've got character witnesses. I've got 23 years of playing the grieving father. Neighbors were coming out of their houses now, drawn by the shouting. Ron immediately smoothed his face, stepped back, held up his hands. Everything's fine, folks. Just a family disagreement. But Mrs. Patterson from next door had her phone out, recording. I'm calling the police. You put your hands on your wife. When the police arrived, they arrested Ron for violating the restraining order, but the phone was destroyed. The evidence was gone. Detective Hayes came by that night after Ron was taken away. I showed her the broken pieces of the phone. She tried to recover data, but the phone was too old, too damaged. The messages were lost. Without that evidence, we're back to Jennifer's testimony and the financial records, Hayes said. His lawyers will argue the payments were loans. Without Carl alive to contradict that, without the text messages showing intent, it's going to be harder to prove. So he might win, I said numbly. I'm going to fight like hell to make sure he doesn't. But Patsy, you need to prepare yourself. The system isn't perfect. Sometimes bad people walk free. After she left, Jennifer and I sat together in her room. She was shaking, crying. He's going to get away with it. He's going to walk out of that courtroom a free man, and then he's going to kill us. I know he will. He can't afford to let us live. Not after everything we know. I held her, but I couldn't tell her she was wrong, because I thought she might be right. The next day, Ron's lawyer called again. Mrs. Garrison, my client is willing to make a deal. If Jennifer recants her testimony, admits she was confused due to her mental state, and says the kidnapping never happened, Ron will plead guilty to a reduced charge of involuntary manslaughter in the death of Tyler Crawford. He'll do 5 years, maybe less with good behavior, and he'll divorce you quietly, sign over everything, leave you alone forever. And if we don't take the deal, then we go to trial. And Ron will fight every charge. His experts will tear apart Jennifer's credibility. They'll bring up her mental illness, her memory gaps, the trauma-induced confusion. There's a good chance he'll be acquitted of everything except the false police report. That's a misdemeanor. He'd do maybe a year. You want us to let him go free in exchange for a few years in minimum security. I want you to be realistic about your chances of conviction. This is the best offer you're going to get. I hung up on him. But that night, lying awake next to Jennifer's bed, I kept thinking about it. What if the jury didn't believe Jennifer? What if Ron walked free and came after us? Could I really risk my daughter's life on the hope that justice would prevail? And then I heard something. A sound outside. Footsteps on the porch. I got up quietly and looked out the window. A figure was standing in our yard, looking up at the house. Too dark to see who it was, but they stood there for 5 minutes, just watching. Then they walked away. Someone was watching us. Ron had friends, people who owed him favors, people who might be willing to make sure Jennifer never made it to trial. We weren't safe here. We weren't safe anywhere, and the trial was still 6 weeks away. The next morning, I called Detective Hayes and told her about the figure outside our house. She sent patrol cars to do extra drive-bys, but that was all she could do. We couldn't prove it was connected to Ron, couldn't prove it was a threat. Jennifer stopped leaving her room, except to use the bathroom. She barely ate. The fear was consuming her from the inside out. Doctor? Brennan increased her therapy sessions to 3 times a week, but nothing seemed to help. I can't do this, she told me one night. I can't go to that trial. I can't sit in a room with him and tell strangers what he did. I can't watch them not believe me. Mom, I think I'd rather die than live like this anymore. Those words broke something inside me. My daughter, my beautiful daughter who'd survived 23 years of hell, was ready to give up because of him. Because Ron was still, even from jail, controlling our lives through fear. I made a decision that night. If the system was going to fail us, I would find another way. I started researching how to disappear, how to get new identities, how to start over somewhere Ron could never find us. Canada, maybe, or Mexico, somewhere far away. But before I could act on any of it, Detective Hayes called with news. We found something. Sharon Ellis, Carl Hutchins's neighbor, has been going through some old belongings. She found a box of Carl's things that he'd asked her to store for him years ago. Inside were journals, detailed journals, going back to 2002. What kind of journals? The kind that document everything. Every interaction with Ron. Every payment. Every order he gave about keeping Jennifer captive. Carl apparently kept records in case Ron ever tried to turn on him. It's all there, Patsy. Everything we need. Hope surged through me for the first time in weeks. This proves Ron did it. It proves intent. It proves conspiracy. Combined with Jennifer's testimony and the financial records, Ron's lawyers won't be able to explain this away. We're amending the charges to include additional counts of kidnapping and conspiracy to commit murder. With these journals, I'm confident we'll get a conviction." The trial date arrived faster than I was ready for. Ron's lawyers had tried to get the journals excluded, arguing they were hearsay since Carl was dead and couldn't be cross-examined. But the judge allowed them, ruling that they were contemporaneous records with enough corroborating detail to be considered reliable. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every day, Jennifer and I sat in that courtroom and listened to the evidence. Listened to Ron's lawyers try to tear apart Jennifer's credibility, calling expert witnesses who talked about false memories and trauma-induced confabulation. But then the prosecution brought out the journals. Page after page of Carl's cramped handwriting, documenting everything. The initial payment, the instructions about where to take Jennifer, the updates about her condition, Ron's orders to break her and make her obedient, the payment to deal with Amanda Crawford, the plan to stage the car accident. I watched Ron's face as the prosecution read from those journals. He sat stone-faced, but I could see the panic in his eyes. His lawyers scrambled, tried to argue that Carl had made it all up, but too many details matched Jennifer's testimony, matched the financial records, matched the timeline. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back, I held Jennifer's hand so tight I thought I might break her fingers. Guilty on all counts: kidnapping, conspiracy to commit murder, filing false police reports, insurance fraud. The judge would determine the sentence, but the prosecutor was asking for life without parole. Jennifer collapsed in my arms, sobbing. It was over. He was never getting out. We were finally safe. But we weren't. Not yet. Ron was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. As he passed our row, he looked right at Jennifer, and he mouthed 3 words: "This isn't over." That night, back at the house in Seaside, I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong. The trial was over. Ron was convicted. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were still in danger. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. It was Detective Hayes. "Patsy, I need you and Jennifer to leave the house right now. Don't pack, don't wait. Just get in your car and drive to the police station." "What's wrong?" "We intercepted a call from the jail. Ron called someone. We couldn't trace who, but we heard enough of the conversation to know he's ordered a hit. Someone's coming for you and Jennifer. We've got units on the way to your house, but I need you to leave now." My blood turned to ice. I ran to Jennifer's room, shook her awake. "We have to go. Right now." "What? Why?" "Ron sent someone after us. We need to get out of here." We ran downstairs. I grabbed my keys and purse. As we headed for the door, I heard something. A car engine outside. Headlights swept across the living room window. "Back door," I hissed. We ran through the kitchen, but as we reached the back door, we heard the front door crash open. Someone was in the house. Jennifer's eyes were wild with terror. We ran out the back, across the yard, toward the woods behind the house. Behind us I heard shouting, footsteps pounding. We crashed through the trees, branches tearing at our clothes. My lungs burned. Jennifer was faster, younger, pulling ahead. I tried to keep up, but my 67-year-old body couldn't match her pace. A gunshot cracked through the night. I screamed. Jennifer screamed. Another shot. We burst out of the tree line onto the coastal highway. Cars were coming. I waved frantically. A truck screeched to a stop. "Please, help us. Someone's trying to kill us." The driver, a young man with wide eyes, motioned for us to get in. We scrambled into the cab. Another gunshot hit the side of the truck. "Drive!" I screamed. He floored it. Through the rear window, I saw a figure emerge from the trees, holding a gun. but we were already too far away. The driver took us straight to the seaside police station. Detective Hayes was waiting. She'd heard the shots over the phone. She'd had units responding. But they'd arrived just after we fled. They caught the shooter an hour later. A man named Derek Walsh, a former employee of Ron's from years ago. He confessed that Ron had promised him $50,000 to kill Jennifer and make it look like an accident. Said Ron had told him from jail that if Jennifer was gone, his conviction would be overturned on appeal. But Ron had miscalculated. The attempted murder charge just added to his sentence. The judge threw the book at him. Life without parole, plus 70 years on all the other charges. It was finally, truly over. 3 months after Ron's sentencing, Jennifer and I stood together at Cannon Beach, Overlook. The same spot where everything had begun 23 years ago. The place where Tyler Crawford had died. The place where Jennifer's life had been stolen. But we weren't there to remember the horror. We were there to reclaim it. Jennifer had been in intensive therapy, working with Dr. Brennan and a team of specialists. She'd started eating again, sleeping better. The nightmares were less frequent. She'd never be the girl she'd been at 17. Too much had been lost, too much time stolen, but she was becoming someone new, someone stronger. We'd sold the house in Seaside. Couldn't bear to live there anymore, with all those memories, all that pain. Instead, we'd bought a small cottage in Newport, right on the water. A fresh start, a new beginning. Jennifer had started painting. Beautiful, haunting seascapes that captured both the darkness she'd survived and the light she was finding again. A gallery in Portland wanted to show her work. She'd agreed, though the thought of being in the public eye still scared her. I'd retired from my job at the library. Now I spent my days helping Jennifer heal, attending support groups for families of trafficking survivors, trying to make sense of everything we'd been through. We'd connected with Tyler's family and Amanda's family. They were grieving all over again, learning the truth about what had happened to their children, but they were also grateful to finally know, to finally be able to properly say goodbye. Standing at that overlook, wind whipping our hair, Jennifer turned to me. "I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness," she said. "You don't owe him forgiveness." "I know. I'm not talking about forgiving Dad. I mean, forgiving myself. For surviving when Tyler didn't. For not escaping sooner. For all the years I lost. None of that was your fault, sweetheart. I know that up here." She tapped her head. "But getting my heart to believe it is harder. Dr. Brennan says it'll take time, maybe years. But I'm starting to understand something. What happened to me doesn't define who I am. I'm not just a victim. I'm a survivor, and I'm still here. I'm still alive. And that means something." I wrapped my arm around her waist. "It means everything." We placed flowers at the overlook, white roses for Tyler, pink carnations for Amanda. We said a prayer for them, for their families, for all the lives Ron had destroyed in his selfishness and rage. And then we walked back to the car. Jennifer drove. She'd been relearning how, taking lessons, rebuilding the skills and confidence that had been taken from her. She was getting good at it. Getting good at a lot of things. As we drove along the coast, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly to our left, Jennifer said, "I want to help other people, people who've been through what I went through. I've been talking to Dr. Brennan about maybe going back to school, getting a degree in psychology or social work, using my experience to help others heal. I think that's a beautiful idea. It won't be easy. I'm 40 years old and I only have a 10th grade education, but I have time now. For the first time in 23 years, I have time, and I'm going to use it." That night, in our cottage, we made dinner together. Salmon and roasted vegetables, simple and healthy. We ate on the deck, watching the sun set over the water. The sky turned orange and pink and purple, colors so beautiful they almost hurt. "Mom," Jennifer said softly, "thank you for never giving up, for believing me when no one else did, for fighting for me. You don't need to thank me. You're my daughter. I would fight the whole world for you. I know. But I need to say it anyway. You saved my life, not just by getting me away from Dad, but by showing me that love can be stronger than hate. That family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing to stand by someone even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." We sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell. Somewhere out there, Ron was in a cell. He'd never breathe free air again. He'd never hurt anyone again. Justice had been slow and imperfect, but it had come. A year after Ron's sentencing, Jennifer had her first art show. The gallery was packed. Her paintings were powerful and raw, depicting the ocean in all its moods, calm and peaceful, violent and stormy, dark and light. Each one told a story without words. At the opening, a woman approached Jennifer. She was in her 50s, with kind eyes. "These are extraordinary," she said. "You've captured something I've never seen before, pain and hope existing in the same space." "Thank you," Jennifer said, still shy about praise. "I'm a survivor too," the woman continued quietly. "Different circumstances, but I understand. Art saved me, gave me a way to process what I couldn't say out loud. I think your work is going to help a lot of people." After she walked away, Jennifer turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm doing it, Mom. I'm actually doing it. I'm building a life." "You are, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." As I watched her that night, surrounded by people admiring her work, talking, and even laughing, I thought about everything we'd been through. The phone call in the middle of the night that had shattered our world. The shocking discovery that Jennifer was alive. The horror of learning what had been done to her. The betrayal of the man I'd spent 40 years married to. The fear and the danger and the fight for justice. It had been the darkest time of my life, but it had also shown me strength I didn't know I had. It had shown me that love is fierce and protective and willing to do whatever it takes. It had shown me that even after the worst imaginable trauma, healing is possible. Jennifer would never get back those 23 years. She'd never be the carefree teenager she'd been. The trauma would always be part of her story, but it wasn't the whole story. She was writing new chapters now. Chapters about resilience and art and helping others. Chapters about choosing life and hope, even after darkness. And I was there beside her, watching her bloom into the woman she was meant to be. Not the daughter I'd lost, but the daughter I'd found again. Changed, yes. Scarred, yes. But alive and fighting and beautiful. 3 years after that phone call at 3 a.m., Jennifer graduated from community college with an associate's degree in psychology. She was applying to universities to continue her education. She'd started a support group for trafficking survivors. She'd published an article about her experience in a national magazine, hoping to raise awareness and help others. We still had hard days, days when the nightmares came back, days when Jennifer couldn't get out of bed, days when the weight of everything that had happened felt too heavy to carry. But those days were getting fewer, and we faced them together. Standing on the beach behind our cottage one evening, watching the waves roll in, Jennifer said, "I used to think my life ended that night. I left the house, that the girl I was died in those years of captivity. But I'm starting to understand that's not true. I didn't die. I survived. And surviving means I get to choose what comes next. I get to choose who I become. And who do you choose to be? She smiled. Someone who helps others. Someone who turns pain into purpose. Someone who proves that darkness doesn't get the final word. I hugged her tight. My daughter. My survivor. My hero. The past would always be there. Ron would always be the father who betrayed her, the monster who stole her years. Carl Hutchins would always be the man who kept her prisoner. Tyler and Amanda would always be the innocent victims who didn't survive. But the future was ours. And it was bright. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had to fight for justice when the system seemed stacked against you? Have you ever had to find strength you didn't know you had? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Your story might help someone else who's going through their own battle. And if this story touched you, please consider hitting that like button and subscribing to hear more stories like this one. Share it with someone who needs to hear a message of hope and resilience. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our struggles makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story, for sitting with me through the darkness and celebrating the light we found on the other side. May you find your own strength when you need it most. May you never stop fighting for what's right. And may you always remember that surviving is just the beginning. What we do after we survive, that's what defines us. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.